Hi there, and thank you for tuning in to The Social Circus, where every week we dive into a variety of topics covering social media, mindset, and how to run your business. I hope that you enjoyed today's episode. Hello, my lovely listeners, and welcome to another episode of The Social Circus. I'm your host, Sarah Thompson, and today I am joined by one of my lovely clients, Lauren. Welcome, Lauren.
Hi.
It's great to have you here. Now, Lauren is the owner of Merio Labs, and I'm going to let her tell us a little bit about her company. And maybe while you're telling us about that, Lauren, you can tell us how you got into this space and what started your entrepreneurial journey, because it's such a cool story. So over to you, my lovely.
Oh my goodness, it's a bit of a journey. But well, first things first. So Merio Product Lab, I started just this past year. I have been doing product development for a really long time though. So what I do as a product lab is I help product entrepreneurs or startup businesses to basically get a strategy in place so that they can develop products in an efficient and monetizable manner. I've been doing product development since I can remember. So I actually started my career in architecture, which is I've had a bit of a windy path getting where I am, but that's really yeah, it's really what set the stage though for me for product development because the basis of the process is almost exactly the same. So you start with something that's more like a schematic design or an idea, and you take it through this strategic process that gets you from one end of like a very wide idea or like ideas to a product that is validated, that has been vetted, that follows all regulatory processes. Everything is aligned, so all of your cross-functional aspects are aligned, and it sets you up so that by the time you're launching, you have all your ducks in a row. So essentially, what I do for my clients is I help them navigate that path because the reality of it is that it's like talking to a bunch of different people who speak different languages throughout the process.
Yeah.
And that's what architects do as the architect of a building. And I don't know that that seems very intuitive, but when you look at it from a broad spectrum, what your job is really truly is like, yes, there's the design aspect, but it's your job to actually orchestrate the building of the thing. So dealing with engineers and the client and anybody else that is involved in making sure that all the pieces fit together correctly. It's the same thing for product development. So slightly different scale depending on the project. And honestly, I feel as though if I can develop buildings, it's way less complicated to develop products. So I really love it because it's a lot faster, quicker turnaround, prototyping so much easier. And I didn't mention this, but I actually focus my business in the beauty space. So I've done development in medical design, and obviously buildings. We talked about that, but I ended up in beauty because I'm a military spouse, a U.S. military spouse, which is partly why I started my business. And we move a lot. And so I ended up in the beauty space when I was searching for jobs coming back from living overseas. And I happen to also be living overseas right now in Japan. And so I thought this was the perfect opportunity to really broaden my impact by creating this business where I can help business owners and not just be embedded within one specific organization. And then also it allows me to work remotely, which has ended up being how I found Sarah because I was looking for help with that kind of stuff. So anyways, that's
So I feel like you missed a little bit. You missed a little. You missed a little step in there from being an architect to the fact that you and Lauren and I have discussed this in depth because my background is not dissimilar to Lauren's, but is way less impressive because I obviously worked in marketing for many years in corporate, and I was involved in product development myself. But in corporates, it's really common, like I said, in a year, you might work on one product development. So it's typically quite a slow process. And people like myself who have lots of marketing experience in terms of product development, often we have very limited product development experience. But let's talk a little bit about your background because your background in beauty product development is phenomenal. And I want to share that with the listeners.
yeah, so my background in beauty product development is specifically within the startup space, and also within a very ambitious business model. And so like what Sarah's saying is it is pretty typical to develop maybe one product line or one product. throughout a year for most companies. But because we were starting from the ground up, I think at one point I counted all the products that I was working on at one time, and it was like 170 different different kinds of units. Yeah, and I mean you could boil it down into like 10 or 12 product lines probably, but you still even with product line extensions, you still have to keep track of every little detail for every product. So it was a lot, and that was all within about a year.
Wow. It's a amazing experience, and I guess what that does is makes you incredibly knowledgeable and also incredibly nimble in that you understand this. Like, if I was to do what you do, I'm not sure I would be much faster than the clients, but with your skills and your background, you really bring this huge amount of experience to helping entrepreneurs who would love to create a product in the beauty sector, but simply don't have the knowledge that you have. So let's talk about who do you love to work with? Because I love what it is that you do, and I'm so inspired by you. So let's talk about your customers and how you help them.
Oh gosh. I mean, I'm kind of open. I actually really enjoy working with a variety of customers, but like one of my favorite customers recently actually wasn't just starting off. They
Mm.
actually have a chemist as part of their team who has developed something incredibly innovative. And I love working with them because um, they just, the best people to work with when you're an expert in a certain area are the people who realize that you can't know everything.
Yeah.
I don't know everything. Like, that's why I like working with Sarah for marketing. So I'm not a marketer. I also don't do sales. I do product, right? And so the best collaborations happen when we trust each other. And I feel like the best clients that I've had have been people who are like, okay, I'm really good at this. Like maybe I'm a chemist, but I don't know how to bring this product to market. I don't know how to scale that. So that's really, those are my favorite kind of people to work with, I guess, on a
Mhm.
broad level. I also really love specifically very innovative products. So anything that you've never seen before, I want to work on that. Um, I think that partly it's because it allows me to draw from my other experiences. So, like a lot of times, I mean, we think about cosmetics and skincare and the beauty industry as like formulas, things that go in a jar, but you forget there are tools and other things that people are developing. I mean, think about like Dyson for to take a vacuum cleaner or fan company and then make a hair dryer or a curling iron. I mean, taking things and mashing them up, I think that's where my big passions lie. And I'm particularly well suited to do those kinds of things because I am used to being embedded in different kinds of spaces. So, having worked on everything from literally buildings to medical devices to I've done toys, like all sorts of different things, and then of course beauty and obviously formulas and those kinds of things. It really sometimes the best thing is found somewhere that you never thought.
Yes.
So,
Lateral connection that people like you make.
yeah, and I think that, like, having that background in architecture, being able to kind of overlay things in my mind and understand how they're going to intersect really helps me to help my clients in the most efficient way possible.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And so when we're talking about clients, I'm actually in a podcast batching day today, so I've had a few guests on already, and a couple of them have been product-based businesses, and it's been interesting to hear their journeys because one of the ladies shared that it took her 4 years to get her product from concept to launch. And this is not unusual in this sector, is it? Particularly in beauty products, that it takes this long because we try and, as small business owners, this is one of our curses, is we try and do everything ourselves. Generally, because we don't have the money to outsource to an agency and pay them hundreds of thousands of dollars to do it for us. And you kind of intersect in the middle of not a big agency, but not doing it all on my own. And so I'm for all my listeners, I've worked a lot with Lauren and helped her on a lot of her programs. So I'm really across them, and I get very excited because they're rooted really and grounded really strongly in solid marketing principles, which makes me very excited. But let's talk about why, when people work with you, their brand is more likely to be successful than if they don't. Because I think your true genius is in understanding that monetization process. That's one of the first steps that people go through with you. So, can you talk a little bit more into that?
Yeah. So I think that the key here is that really marketing and product go hand in hand, and you shouldn't be doing the marketing after product development, and you shouldn't be doing marketing without the product either. You kind of have to have both in order for things to be really integrated. And so the very first step, I mean, obviously the first step is to come up with an idea, right?
Yes.
But
Yeah.
the idea has to be rooted in some sound logic first. I mean, you can just come up with an idea willy-nilly and hope for the best and go pitch yourself on, something like a Shark Tank.
Yes.
You may get somewhere, you may not. But really what we do foundationally is in product development, it is a best practice, and there's a good reason for this, to start with the problem that you have, and then going from the problem to like, who is it that you're solving the problem for? And making sure that there's actually someone there for that and there's a market for it, right? And there are a whole bunch of different ways you can do that. And actually just was working on a course. But let me think, oh, I'm like, oh, my brain is spinning. But really, I believe truly that the most successful products have a reason that they exist. It's not
Yes.
just because I wanted it to be this way and so it's this way. And they're very customer focused. In the design industry, architecture, industrial design, any kind of product development, it tends to be more customer or human focused in general because those are the people who are going to be using your products. And so making sure that they actually have a need that you're actually serving them is really important. And I think that that is really well aligned with how you do marketing because marketing is sharing the reasons why you would want to buy something. So if you don't have that, if you don't have a mission, if you don't have a bigger vision, then how do you even sell it? I guess is the question in probably my mind and many people's minds. It makes it
Yes.
really difficult. And so that's where I like to start with my clients is, to make sure that they're really solidly grounded and that they have that mission, they have a vision. And then, of course, all of the like strategic technical things that we need so that before they even dip their toe into manufacturing, they know who they are, they know what they're doing. And it sets them up really for much clearer communication cross functionally. So, like, even in dealing with manufacturers, if you go in the door and you have a really clear idea about what you're looking for, it's going to be so much easier for them to deliver that to you because if you walk in the door and you're really unclear, then there are like 100 questions that get thrown at you that you
Mm.
may or may not know the answers to. So, part of what I do is kind of demystify what those questions will probably be because I've
Yeah.
been through it the times. And then, so I already know, like, okay, depending on what you're trying to do, these are some of the answers probably already. And then it's this back and forth between, but it shortens that process when you have a lot of that research done up front because you can limit things a lot easier. And it sounds a little bit counterintuitive, but constraints and this goes back to like the early design days of like the Eames with the tiered furniture designers. They're like design without constraints is really difficult to do. And creating products without constraints is really difficult because the world is your oyster and where do you aim yourself? Like how do you take anything? So it actually helps streamline and make things more efficiently run when you can limit like the number of manufacturers you're going to work with, like based on even just mission and principles that you have.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just makes it all more straightforward. So
Oh, I love that. And thank you for sharing that really in-depth answer because I think that a lot of people, I have clients come to me all the time that are in the early stage of their product. They have an idea, which is like you say, the starting point, but then they're not really clear. They loved it as an idea. And this is one of the hardest things is when people are truly passionate about it and you're like, who is there anyone that like we haven't validated the idea yet? Like, does anyone actually want to buy this as a product? Is this a concept do you think exists out there? And quite often, particularly for us in Australia, we're such a small market here compared to the US. And so quite often the product will exist in America and the person's like, but I want this product to exist in Australia, but I want it to be for like Australian conditions or Australian skin. And so I love that because that's kind of like there's something out there. And so we know there's a market, but then I want it to really meet my audience's problems here in this local market. So to me, that's a really great place to start. And from what you're saying, that's always a good idea. So if we have an idea, which I think that most women have had an idea for a beauty or a makeup or a skincare product at some point. Like we've been using something and going, this is rubbish. Why doesn't it X, Y, Z kind of thing? So how do we then actually start? Because I think that's one of the most overwhelming things. And when I've worked with clients and they've already gotten started, I'm like, thank goodness, because that's terrifying, that bit. But this is where you really bridge, I think, a huge gap in the market from doing everything myself and taking like years and years to just throwing a lot of money at it with an agency, which is one idea. But you fit really much in the middle where you can work alongside people, you can teach them how to do it. So can we talk a little bit about your process and how you help and support your clients?
Yeah, so I have a couple different ways that I'm working on building or also already have. One of the ways is to work alongside you, as Sarah just mentioned, and kind of do it's like a done with you sort of model, I guess I would say, where I already have frameworks and processes that I've used over and over and over again with success that then we go through. So it already has everything mapped out for you. You don't have to do the guessing work because, I mean, yes, of course, you can go to YouTube and you can look around and you can try to figure it out. I mean, there are, I don't know how many resources on the internet that can tell you how product development works, that can tell you how beauty product development works. But at the end of the day, you have to choose a model that you're
Yes.
going to go with. And you have to trust the source where that came from. And I think it's overwhelming, honestly, for people to jump in and be like, shoot, well, what does that even mean? I mean, they don't have the vocabulary. It's kind of like what I was saying about speaking different languages. Every industry is nuanced. So every industry has its own language, and beauty is no different. So
Yes.
knowing the things about the beauty industry that are a little bit nuanced helps. Um, but I went through it, to be honest. Like, this is kind of how I got where I am. And I guess I didn't mention this, but when I started at the beauty startup, I had never worked in the beauty industry. I mean, I wear makeup because I like makeup and it's fun.
Yeah.
Um, but I had to learn everything from scratch. And obviously have a product development background. So, like, the basis, again, is the same. But what I've done through my experience is really streamline the process specific to this industry.
Yes.
And I've been in multiple businesses where, you walk in the door and they've already gotten started and they have no process in place, and you're dealing with all these hiccups and things that they just couldn't have foreseen. They just couldn't have
Mm.
because they didn't know. And of course, you don't know what you don't know, as we always say. So my job is to know a lot of those things for you
Yeah.
and make sure that you don't miss the steps that you needed to take so that you can have success. So saving money by not spending extra time, by not spending money on things that you don't need to spend money on, like
Yeah.
saving your time by avoiding mistakes that would have to be redone. Those are the kinds of things that I can do for my clients because I've been through regulatory processes. I've entered multiple countries with products. I've I've run the gamut of all the different kinds of beauty products that are out there, skincare tools, accessories, makeup of all kinds. So, I've been through custom formulation. I've been through something that's more similar to white label. So I can speak to all the different ways that you can kind of like configure these things. We
Yeah.
can work together to figure out what makes sense for you as a client, and then we move forward in the most efficient path. I
I
hope
love
that answered
that.
it.
Absolutely, it did. It was great. Thank you.
Mhm.
And I was going to say, um, in terms of, because I know that you are incredibly passionate and very knowledgeable about beauty, skincare, makeup, all the things. So why are you helping people? Why haven't you decided to launch your own product?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And I think about that actually a lot. And sometimes I think, oh, I should do this. But to be honest, I've always enjoyed being like a support mechanism. And I don't know,
I've done that.
I'm just not a person who wants to be in front and in the limelight. Um, I'm more the person who likes to be like the cheerleader in the background who's got your back, like I'm a builder, like I like to help build. So for me, it's more fun to be in the corner where we're like creating something new and then
Yep.
let somebody else take that glory piece at the end of the day. Um, I just, it's what I'm more passionate about. And it's been that way my entire career with everything I've ever done. I've never really needed to have that spotlight on me. So
Yes.
and also I get to create all sorts of different things. So, I mean, it fulfills me in a different way because when you have a brand, you commit to a mission, right? Like you commit to a product line and you should. I mean, you really should do that. Some people don't like that story. But but consulting and working with clients allows me to be in a bunch of different spaces at the same time, and I really like that. Keeps me on my toes. So
Yeah, I love that. I very much resonate with that when you're saying that, Lauren. Like you, I'm a cheerleader and I love seeing things come to life. And my husband and I have thrown around this idea a few times because he's obviously a web designer and I have lots of marketing. And I've had a few friends go, you should just go into e-commerce and just launch a product and stuff. And I'm like, I don't know if that lights me up, like watching other people do that and being there, like you say, their cheerleader and their champion and helping them achieve success. That totally lights me up and is very much the same way it does for you. So it's so good to know where we fit into things. But I do love whenever I meet you because you're always like, oh, look what I've bought. And particularly because you're living in Japan at the moment, they have very cool makeup and skincare there. And it's exciting and fun to watch innovation and that kind of changes in your industry come through all the time without having to be wedded to, oh gosh, I'm on a trend and it's going down, rather than being able to watch what's coming through.
yeah.
So from a listener's perspective, I hope you have all enjoyed hearing about Lauren and what does product development involve. Can we take a little hard right turn? Because I know that many of our listeners are mums and that we do everything alongside the busyness of life. So you shared really briefly that you are a military spouse and you're currently stationed in Japan. So can I ask you, how has that been? Because your life gets upheaved every time you have to move, but you're managing to build this amazing business because of the online space. So share a little bit about that with us and being a mum as well with children in a foreign country.
Gosh, where to start? So just full disclaimer, this is not our first time living in Japan. This is our second time living in Japan. So at least it doesn't feel as foreign, I suppose. And I am learning some Japanese, so that has been super helpful in getting around. Um, and I would say, like, from a business, we'll start with business. So from a business standpoint, um, honestly, it's really difficult being a military spouse and moving around and having to uproot all the time. I have had to change jobs more than I would like. More often than not, the places I've worked have not been willing to let me work remote, so I have had no
Mm.
choice but to figure out the next thing. And that's part of the reason that I wanted to do something for myself, to be honest, was that
Yes.
I need the flexibility to be able to up and move to Japan and then be here for 3 years and then move back to the States or somewhere else and not have to worry about having to change things all the time. Um, I think one of the good things about it is that I've had a really widely varied experience because, if anything, I'm adaptable.
Absolutely.
And so with my family, we're really used to change, and it m- it definitely overflows into business, and that's probably why I thrive so well in like startup type atmospheres and working on like new things, is because things are constantly changing. There's always something that you need to figure out, and I'm really good at problem solving and pivoting because that is what we do every time we move. So make new friends and network and do all the things. There are pluses and minuses to that. With regard to being in Japan, like from a business standpoint, it is really cool because I get to play with all of the fun Japanese makeup and skincare tools and things. There's a lot here beyond makeup and skincare. There's just so much interesting stuff out there from a product standpoint that I just like to go and walk around the mall and see what I see. I mean, whether it's robots or some little trinket, it's just like, whoa.
They're living in another, they're living a couple of centuries ahead, I always think, the Japanese.
They honored a lot of ways. And just even looking at infrastructure and stuff, I mean, it's just like, wow. Um, Now, if you look at like the family side of things, I mean, there's a lot to be said there. I mean, my son, he's 7 going on 8, and he's lived in multiple countries. He's lived in a lot of different houses. Our daughter's 3. Um, she's only been in a couple places so far. And I will say that it helps because we have a pretty big community here of military, in this specific location. And so there are a lot of English speakers, a lot of Americans around. And I think one of the coolest things about it is that we live in kind of like an American bubble, but then when we walk out of our bubble, we're in Japan. So it's like the best of both worlds. Like, I don't have to get on an airplane to go to another country. It's just walk outside. Um,
Cool.
yeah, I mean, our kids are adaptable. They really like our son. Like I said, he's moved so many times now. It's just part of life at this point. And, it's a little bit sad every time we move because he has to change friends, or he doesn't have to lose friends, but he has to make new friends wherever we go. And it's a change, but he does really well with it. And I mean, the business thing, it allows me to have more time and more flexibility with them as well. So I'm also able to be a better support structure for them, which is important. When I was working at a startup, I had very little time for myself. So
Which flows onto your family. So I love that. And I thank you for sharing all of that. It's always really interesting to see other people's perspectives and what their world looks like when we kind of sit in, like you say, our own little bubbles of, like, I sit very comfortably living in Australia when I'm an Australian. I have lived in my same house for 13 years. And so we do all these things out of routine, and it's lovely to hear what that experience feels like for someone else. But I love the digital business, and I love the fact that we can run these businesses, and when you up and move next time, your business will go with you, and all of the wonderful resources that you've created are just they're completely online and completely adaptable, which is so exciting to see that being built for you. I love it. I'm meandering now. I will try and wrap us up and just say, Lauren, thank you for coming on my show and sharing with us more about product development, because I think it's an area many of us have an interest in, particularly as entrepreneurs, because we inherently love innovation. That's kind of why we do what we do. But I think it's something that we've often thought, I have no idea how that process works, and maybe I need a $1 million angel investor. And actually, we just need someone like you in our corner who knows the process that we can work with to create a product in a really timely manner. So thank you for coming on today. I've loved having a conversation with you. I really appreciate you sharing your wisdom so generously.
yeah, thank you for having me. I was so excited to join you.
Brilliant. My pleasure. And to all my lovely listeners, please be sure to check out the show notes so that you can follow Lauren and her company, and all of the links on how you can work with her included. So if you've been sitting there thinking about a product and thinking, I don't know how to make this come to life, then I have kindly introduced you to the person who's going to do that. So do check out the show notes to connect with her. And just a reminder, every week the Social Circus comes out on a Wednesday morning, so make sure you tune in the same time next week. Thank you for listening. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Social Circus. As your host, Sarah Thompson, I am thrilled that you've chosen to spend your time hanging out with me. I would be so grateful if you could spare an extra moment to go and leave me a review on your favorite podcasting platform. And if you even felt more excited, you could share my podcast with your friends who you think would get great value from it. Thanks so much again for tuning in.